So if I store, let's just for argument's sake, say that a 1 is represented by current flowing through a circuit. When current flows, it's a 1. When current doesn't flow, it's a 0. So I want to know what's on your machine. I grab it somehow. Let's not worry about the circumstances. I then take your chip and I freeze it, bring it down to some extremely low temperature. And then because I'm China or Russia or England or France, I have the resources whereby I start shaving the plastic off the chip. Because you know the plastic and the chip is made that big because we want to hold it with our fingers. There's no reason for it to be that big. It can be a lot smaller once it's ornamented. But somehow I shave the plastic off and I expose the innards of the chip. I can then take that and put it underneath an electron microscope and see where the traces are worn and say there's a 1, there's a 0, and reconstruct the information just from looking at the how much wear is in the conductors of the interior of the chip. So let's try and get a little bit back on track. Assuming that we're not zapped by the sun. Here's a solution that, at a very high level, that we had proposed and got funded. Essentially, we said the first thing we need to do is to build a protected enclave from which we can operate that the adversary cannot get at, so that our defensive software can't be corrupted. So it is this protected enclave, protected from both logical and physical attacks. Then inside that protected enclave is a control center, which is firmware, software that's running. And the labyrinth is what is known as the execution environment. In other words, the labyrinth in this picture represents the computer we're protecting and its computational environment. Now, one of the ways in which adversaries can exploit the machine is because they know where things are. You know, if I have one copy of Windows where it keeps certain critical information, it'll be the same place on all your machines. So one way to deflect the adversary is to take the execution environment of the host machine and cause it to be a labyrinth, and one which, as soon as you detect that the adversary has touched a particular place that should not have been touched, to dynamic, in real time, reconfigure the machine so that things are not at all where they were a few hundredths of a second ago. Just move them all around, and it's possible to do that. So that the labyrinth is not fixed, but the labyrinth itself is changing as the attack is going on to mitigate the effects of the attack and to make it very hard.
Can you trace how many hits you're taking based on how frequently your labyrinth is changing?
Yeah, sure.
Is that how you like track this kind of activity?
Well, the way in which one example is that there are certain what are called data structures used by operating systems to control the machine. Those data structures should only change in very specific ways. By monitoring those data structures, if there's a change that violates the policy of how that change should take place, you can presume with almost absolute certainty that your machine has been subverted, and you can start moving things around, reconstituting and rebuilding in real time, so that the adversary now, that's the thing that my company stresses. You know, for the longest time, there was this sort of like, well, you know, we have so much to protect, and the adversary has to find one hole. Well, that's true, but we have control of the hardware. We have control of the machine. He can easily subvert our own software, because software is just instructions in memory. if he can arrange things so that he has gotten control of the machine, even for a handful of instructions, he can go and change our software that's supposed to protect our machine and null it out. But he can't. Let me show you, well, where is it? This is a little much too detailed.
So just out of curiosity, because
We don't have it here. Go ahead.
do you guys actually see a lot of your labyrinths changing shape? Are they very dynamic, or does this happen like rarely, or it's never happened?
Well, for us, we're doing testing, so we're deliberately causing them to change. So,
This is relatively new, is what you're saying.
oh, yeah, very new. This is cutting edge.
Okay.
So this is how we do this. Essentially, we design the additional electronics, hardware that we then plug in to the motherboard that we want to protect. This, in this case, this piece of electronics is exposed. The way in which it gets fielded, let's see, is this way. Those chips that you saw get encased in an epoxy, have a membrane sensor on it, so that if somebody tries to probe it, we know it's being probed, has temperature sensors, has power sensors, has sensors for ionization. So if you try to look at inside this card with an X-ray machine, the card knows it's being X-rayed and will take protective actions. So this is not for your home computer, obviously, you know. But this is the sort of thing that the government is, that we're doing for the government to protect systems.
And just out of curiosity, does any of this stuff have like a self-learning element to it?
Yes.
So this is where the whole AI going out of
Yeah.
control.
Well, in fact, this is, we have AI components in here that essentially what happens is we have a control loop that sits there, collects data, and forms a table of parameters, metrics that have been read. And that table tells us the state of the machine. And if there's elements that are not what they ought to be, we turn it over to an AI program that says, here is the state of the machine, and then we give it what's called a domain with actions that it can take to change the state of the machine. And it has a planning algorithm that says, okay, this is what the situation is. Here are the number of things that I can do. Is there some way to take this corrupted situation and turn it into a good situation? And it puts a plan together, then sends it and executes the plan, then waits for the next situational update. If the corruption has gone away, the machine has returned to a normal state, then the control program takes that plan of how to deal with that corruption and can instantly push it out into the network. So all machines that are equipped with our stuff know how to deal with that particular piece of malware if it appears on their machine. And then it doesn't have to discover it. So a machine that gets this downloaded then knows what to do when that condition arises.
For customers,
Not yet,
not yet, okay.
no.
Because like Sicore needs it, right?
Yeah, because the government has funded this work, they get first crack at it. And, you know, it's tough to go into a bank and say, let me into your deepest, darkest places and plug in these electronics. So, you know, we have to, that's a tough nut to crack, and first we have to go in and maybe through the Department of Justice or DHS, Homeland Security, maybe the Department of Defense. Then after it's been established in those domains, we can point back to them and get one